Welcome back to Cooley Loves Comic Books. For this episode, I want to take a look at the Fearsom Doctor Fang. This story was published by TKO Studios, and I had heard a little bit about them. I think Joey from Talking Comics had mentioned them a few times, but one of the founders of TKO Studios, Tze Chun, they did an interview with him, an in-depth interview, and I listened to that, and that's what really caught my attention the most about TKO Studios and what they're doing. Because they're a comic book publisher, but they're going in a completely different direction insofar as how they're producing their content and then also releasing it. And the biggest thing that grabbed me of what they said was that they're trying to put the writers and the artists in an environment where they can produce their best work. And to an extent, I think that's partially accomplished by the way that they're releasing their work, which is in 6 issues or 1 trade at the same time. So a big chunk of story all at once, versus kind of, having everything drawn out over, 1 month to the next, and so forth. So it really grabbed my attention. And if you haven't heard of them, or if that's at all curious here, you want to find out more, I'll put a link to the podcast in the description of this video, so you can go back and listen to that interview, kind of have him, or listen to him tell you more what they're doing. But that inspired me to pick up a couple of their stories, and this is one of them, obviously. And I kind of picked it because of the genre, but also because Tze Chun was one of the writers. So the Fearsome Doctor Fang is written by Tze Chun, Mike Weiss, art is by Dan McDavid, colors by Daniela Miwa, and letters by Steve Wins. This book is a lot of fun. If I had to kind of encapsulate it for you, it's kind of like a mix of Batman, Indiana Jones, and the steampunk genre, or set in the steampunk genre. It's set in the 20s and 30s. Like, it starts out in San Francisco. It moves into China and the Orient. It feels very much like a serial adventure from the 20s and 30s, and it fits right into that far past futuristic science of steampunk, which is one of my favorites for sure. The main character, Dr. Fang, is very cool. I have to say, like, the more that I read him and the more that he developed through this big chunk of story, the more interesting he is. And I mean, to that end, I will say, I've definitely kind of realized that especially on complex stories or deep stories, I really like reading trades or reading a bunch of issues at once. And so to be able to sit and read 6 floppies all at once and get all of that story and all of that character development all at once, I think I really enjoyed that. It really worked for this story. And I'm curious to see how that works with more of what TKO is doing. But there's a real pace to this. I mean, again, it really feels like an action serial. I mean, you can almost see this as being like a radio play, like 40s or 30s, 40s, 50s, something like that. It has that kind of feel, and it has that pace to it. Kind of like your Indiana Jones. Like, it's an adventure tale that just kind of, like, once the story gets rolling, it just has a lot of momentum to it. What was really refreshing is that, for one, the character development was really there. Like, all of the main characters, the hero characters, there's some real depth to them. There's some real character development to them. And Dr. Fang especially is really interesting. He's a very cool character. It's kind of this fresh take, this fresh perspective on a character. And there's nothing in this story that is stereotypical at all. Like, that was what struck me as much. One is just, I mean, it looks very cool. It looks very like 20s, which is just a lot of fun to me. But just, it's a really solid, good story, and it does not fall into a lot of the, you would expect a story about this with the main character and kind of knowing that it's somebody called Dr. Fang and who's from China and all that it would fall into these tropes. But it really doesn't. It doesn't at all. And that's very cool. I love that there's a boat that's a blimp as well. That they're using anything with dirigibles, you've got me. I just it's one of the things that I really dig. So there's so many cool like aspects to the story. Yeah, just like the ancient future science aspect to this. Just that steampunky element is just very, very cool. Obviously, I went for the floppies. There's some really cool cover art on these. Really interesting villains. A really interesting villain. It's a really good story. So I was taken with it. I wanted to make a quick video about it and just kind of get the word out, because maybe you haven't heard about TKO Studios, or you're curious but weren't sure about it. Whatever. I just wanted to kind of let you know what I thought originally. I've got another one of their stories to read as well, so I'll check that out. And they're about to come out with a new grouping of stories as well. So there's a couple of those that I want to check out. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know about this, and it's definitely a fun read if you're curious at all. Yeah, I think you're gonna like it, especially again if you like steampunk, that sort of stuff. So yeah, thanks for much for watching. If you can, support your local comic book shop. And to that end, it's worth mentioning that TKO does work with a lot of local comic book shops, so it's very possible that you can still get this through your local store as well. For the meantime, I'm going to go out there and read some more comic books, and you should do that too. So thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you on the next one.